Hey everybody, this is Brad from Johnson Small Engines, better known as the one-handed mechanic. If I can do it, you can too. Today we are working on a John Deere D140, and he has a flat rear tire, and I'm going to show you, in my opinion, on how to take off the tire, install a tube, and get it back on and get going. Some tools we're going to need today. I'm doing this by myself today, so bear with me when I'm going to get the camera set up for you guys. But the main thing is, don't need to replace your tire every time it goes flat. A lot of people just think that, oh, you have to replace the tire if it goes flat. No, you don't. You just put a tube in it. It's very easy to find the right size tube for the tire because you're basically going to get the exact same size tube that says the outside diameter of your tire, and your tire is going to show it somewhere around here. It's going to say, now this one says 20 by 1050 or 20 by 10 by 8. So we have this is the tube, 20 by 10 by 8, all right? And tools we need, there may be a few more here and there, but 3 screwdrivers to pry off the tire from the rim. I am gonna use a bead brake tool. Not sure if I'm gonna be able to get this in the picture or not, but this is it's a slide hammer. I will put one in the link in the description below. I don't expect everybody to go out and purchase one of these. I do it all the time, so I need something that's gonna be quick. Basically, it has a little hook on the end of it here that just sits right on the bead of the tire. I'll show you how to do it when you get the tire off, and it helps it breaks the bead off. At home, you guys can probably just use a hammer and a chisel, somehow a block of wood. Sometimes you can even step on these things and get them off, but sometimes it can be a real bugger. If you can't get it off easily, you may have to go down to your local automotive guy, and he can probably pop them off with the tire machine. It's not that hard, but I use a slap hammer. You'll see how I do it. A couple more tools we're gonna need. An air pump, or if you have compressed air. This is just a handheld air pump that I use, and it eliminates me from having to use my compressor in the shop. And I also take one of these on the road at all times. 3 screwdrivers, I think I'm gonna mention that. I'm using a pair of needle nose vice grips with some electrical tape because we need to grab the valve stem. This is a valve stem removal tool. So this takes out your valve stem in your tire, and it also is going to help us blow air in the new tube just so we can check it. This is a hook tool for taking off the cap on the back of the rim, and those caps can get pretty, talking about the rubber cap right here. It's summertime when I'm doing this, so this rubber cap's going to be very pliable. In the wintertime, these things can be crusty and very hard to get off. I would say a heat gun, heat it up with a heat gun, and then pull it off. Tire gauge, obviously, and a chuck, because I'm going to use compressed air at this point. And you do need a way to get the tractor up in the air. And I'm just going to use a small forward deck. So you might as well go ahead and jack it up. Just back here at the transmission area, all you need to do is you need to get the tire off the ground just a little bit. And these tractors are pretty, well, this one's actually doesn't have the mower deck on it, so it's a little bit easier. Have to get the rubber cap off the back here, and I'm just going to use my little hook tool that I use. I'm going to go behind that. I'm just going to pry a little bit, and I'm going to just go around it a little bit at a time. These will come off fairly easy if they're pliable. If they're very crusty and old, you might as well just get a new one. That just popped off. Be careful not to tear it. The older they get, the harder they get to come off, and then you tear them up. Okay, so right now we have a C-clip right here. There's a big washer, and then there's a C-clip in front of that big washer. And there also, and remind yourself that there is a keyway here in the shaft. I'm going to show you that too. Okay, so I'm going to take one of my screwdrivers, doesn't matter which one. I'm just going to pry off the C-clip. And it'll pop. Sometimes they'll pop and they'll fly away. Not fly away, but sometimes these guys will pop out, and you got to watch where they go. Don't lose it. Remember, big washer goes on, and then the C-clip. Now, you should be able to slide this off. Now, I can already see rust in here. This may or may not slide off. I'm wiggling the tire back and forth, back and forth. It is starting to come right now. Now, I'm going to push it back on because it's getting tough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little PB Blaster. PB Blaster is my go-to oil for getting anything to slide a little bit easier. Just put it right in the keyway, right where the keyway is. And that should help. There it comes. Slides right off. Now, you have to remember when you slide your tire off, there's a keyway. I put the keyway in the up position so it wouldn't drop off, but this is the square keyway. Very important that you take it off the shaft. This is my opinion. Take it off the shaft, put it in after you put the rim on, because then you know you didn't push it out the backside. And what'll happen is, if this key is not in, you'll actually put the tire on, put it all back together again, you said everything's great. You get on the tractor, you push the forward pedal or reverse pedal, and you go nowhere. And it's because the shaft will turn, but the wheel will not. And you will not go anywhere. I've had people do their own tires and call me up and say, Brad, I fixed a flat tire, and now it won't move. It's all because of this. And then trying to find that in your backyard somewhere in the grass, almost impossible. So remember, I turn the keyway up, so you have the key in the shaft, the keyway. I just have it facing up, so when I take the tire off, you're gonna be right there in front of you. If it does fall on the ground, you may wanna put something underneath the tire just so you don't lose it. Okay, so now we have the tire off. Now this one is completely flat because there is an issue, and we have to look on the inside to make sure that we can make sure that we don't miss on there. So I'm gonna zoom this out a little bit, kind of show you what I'm gonna do now. All right, so now what we have to do is you're gonna take off your valve stem cap. This is the cap. You can keep that for a later time. Normally, all new tubes come with the caps, and I forgot we're gonna need a pair of. We're gonna have to cut this out too, but I'm gonna go ahead and just take out the valve stem with the valve stem tool, just to see if there's any air in it. You don't want any air in your tire when you're taking off. Wow, this one's stuck. Huh, that one's not even coming off. All right, so the valve stem is stuck inside of this valve itself, and it's a rubber valve that sticks into the rim right here. We're gonna eliminate that, so we have to cut this out. Okay, so with a pair of cutters, I'm gonna go ahead and snip around. Okay, so it did have a little bit of air in it. Okay, we're gonna eliminate this rubber grommet that actually, it sticks on both sides of the rim. There's a piece that I just cut off, and there's a piece that goes inside here. Now we have to pop we don't have to take the tire off the rim, but we do have to pop both beads. And this is where my slap hammer comes in handy. And you guys out there, you just put it on its side like this. And if you can, sometimes you can just push this down with your feet, but a lot of times these need to be hit off with either some kind of a wedge. You can use a wedge and a hammer and try to hit the bead off. Then you gotta turn it over and hit the other side. So we're gonna go ahead and do it with my tool, my slap hammer. It just slides up and down. It's not gonna show in the picture, but I slide the handle up and I slap it down. And just the inertia, we're gonna go ahead and slap this. You gotta put it right in between the tire and the bead and then hit it. Just like that. One slap of that slide hammer and it's off. Now I gotta turn it over. We're gonna hit it again. One slap and it's off. All right, so now we got both. Both have to be loose. And at this point, the valve stem side, what I do is I push in the tire on this side, push it in as far into the middle of the rim as you can get it. And then with your 3 screwdrivers, I'm gonna use the big one first. We're gonna go ahead with this. We'll have this side in, this side shoved in as far as I can, so that allows this side to come out a little bit, and it makes it easy to pop over the rim. Just like that. Get your other screwdriver about 1 or 2 inches to the right or left of it, and you do it again. And you get your third screwdriver, and I usually go on the opposite side. And once you get 3 usually done, that'll usually stay like that. Then you can pop at least one of them out, and you start at the next little, I call them baby steps, but little increments. You don't want to bite off too much at once because you won't be able to get the tire off the rim. The longer the bar, the better leverage you have. You can actually have too much leverage and you can bend the rim if you're not careful, depending on how hard the tire is. Again, doing this in heated area is really nice. I mean, right now it's about 85 degrees. If you do get somewhere where it's freezing outside, these tires are so hard. Now I just popped that bead off this side. This is the side that has the valve stem. Keep that in mind. Now I just have to put what I do is I use my knuckles and I go around, and you gotta be careful because if there's thorns or nails in your tire, it will get you. They will get you. And this guy was running with a flat tire, and you always have to double check. You're gonna check the inside here, you're gonna check the tire here, and you're gonna check the other side. So basically, I do the knuckles all the way around the inside of the tire, and I'm not feeling anything right now. Usually you'll feel a nail or a thorn. If you guys have any thorn bushes, trust me, you're gonna have flat tires on every one of your machines. But I'm not feeling it. Now, you can also look at the bead. This bead is fairly clean. All right, also, I just picked out the other side of my valve stem because I had to cut it. So what we did was we literally cut the valve stem in half, okay, and we're gonna put the tube in. All right, you gotta get that out of there too. And make sure you have nothing in your tire. If you need to, use a small vacuum cleaner if you have one, and suck everything out of here. All the little particles, rocks, anything that would be in the bottom of this tire, you don't want it in there. See it, like I was saying about this, usually if you see dirt right here, it's usually a sign of it leaking there. The other side, I mean, there's a little bit of dirt, but looks like it was sealing pretty good. And also, before you put your tube in here, check your rim to make sure there's nothing sharp, because this was tubeless until we put a tube in it. And now we have to be careful of everything that may pop that tube. So you have to make sure that everything is out of your tire, and then make sure that you have nothing. Like sometimes when they make these at the factory, these rims are not like really clean, and they have the weld splatter, and I try to take that off. But this one is nice and clean. Now, we didn't take the tire off the rim. We don't need to. Okay, just remember when you do take this side of the tire off, you want the valve stem side. All right, so the tire's ready for the tube. So when you get your tube, believe it or not, there is a upside and a downside to the tube. And how I figured that out is here's another valve stem cap we can take off. Okay, so I usually put the brand new one back on for the customer. And we're gonna take some air and we're gonna blow into that tube. And then we're gonna fill up the tube to find out which way, I guess you call it up and down. Top and bottom. All right, so I only have it this full, but already you can tell the valve stem is here. This valve stem is sitting on the top of this. You flip it over and the valve stem is like on what I call the bottom. And the reason why it's either top, bottom, right, left, whatever you want to call it, but the valve stem has to be on the top side of the tube because we're going to put the valve stem in the hole which is on the top side of this rim. So you can put these in backwards, and what will happen if you put it in backwards, it might get sucked into the rim when you put air in it, and then you'll lose your tube, and then you have to pop the tube to get it out. So make sure you put the tube in correctly. I'm going to go ahead and deflate this now so we can get it in that tire. Don't try to put it in the tire with air in it. It's hard, and I don't even know if you could probably do it, but just be careful. So I take the valve stem out with a valve stem tool remover. Okay, set it to the side, blow the air out of it, just push the air out, most of it. Now, what I do is I'll try to put the valve stem in first. So you have to kind of get it all in there. Believe it or not, bigger tires are easier to work on than smaller tires in my eyes. These little tires are a real pain. All right, so I'm forcing it in there, trying to be neat about it so you don't crimple it up. And I'm gonna put the valve stem, hopefully you guys can see this on camera, I'm doing this for nothing. All right, so I'm gonna try to put this valve stem in where the hole is. Push it through like this, and it doesn't matter right now exactly where the tube is. I just want to get this valve stem in here, and I want to get it seated. Make sure you have that valve stem the correct distance. Now the other side of my valve stem remover is actually a screw on. It screws onto the threads of your cap. Now I do this so it doesn't go through, it doesn't fall back out again. So if I put this on here, it will not fall out. All right, so then you go ahead and start pushing the tube around the rim, and it's gonna be a little snug, it's gonna be tight, but it'll go. Because if you get the right size tube for the tire, this one, like I said, this one's a 20 by 10 by 8, that tube is a 20 by 10 by 8. Now we have it in there, and we're set up go ahead and put the tire back on. Now, again, what I'll do is I'll push in this side, one of the sides. I usually go with the valve stem, push it in with my kneecap. You want to get this tire to go in as far into that rim as you can so you can start putting the bead back on. And then a little bit at a time, as I'm pushing in with my knee and pushing down with my other arm, just go ahead and keep flipping 1 little inch at a time. I turn the tire around a little bit and push this down. That's the hard part, is you got to get that tire down into the nearest to the center of the rim as you can. And that gives you play to put it over. And you do have to make sure that you do not pinch the tube with your screwdriver or your, I use this is used to be a pry bar. I grounded it down so it's not so sharp, so I don't make that mistake. But it's easy to pinch the tube. You just have to be aware where that tube is at. And like I said, again, just a little bit at a time. Leverage is our helper too. The longer the pry bar, the easier this is going to be. Looks like this one's starting to come off the other side a little bit on me. You just have to try to keep pushing the tire down into the skinniest part of the rim. And everybody out there will say, oh, why don't you put some lubrication on that? Well, trust me, I like it because it's sticking, okay? If you put lubrication on it, good luck trying to get this tire to actually stay. And once you get it past a certain point, it's going to get a little bit easier, and then everything is just going to go right on. And I'm just taking little bits, right, just like that. And you have to make sure that you don't pinch your tube. All right, so what I do now is I'll kind of put it on its side like that. I do see the tube sticking out here. I don't know if you guys can see that. I have to make sure that when I blow this up, that tube's going to be behind that tire. All right, so it's a little bit, I'm not quite liking exactly where that is right there. So I'm going to go ahead and try to push this tube in with my hands. All right, so I was able to get that tube in further, so it's not pinched on the rim right here. So you have to pay attention both sides. This side we did not take off, so it's going to be on the inside anyway. We only took off this one side, okay? All right, so that looks good. Now this is where you want to make sure that this is straight. You can move the rim, you can actually turn it a little bit, and you can make sure it's straight. And that's where I go ahead, and I don't want to pinch the valve stem too tight. I just want to pinch it good enough that it doesn't get sucked in when you put air in it. Now I'm also going to put a little bit of what I use is Simple Green or soap, any kind of soap around the rim right here. So when you do blow it up, it'll seat better. And then this side here, it looks like it's already seated, but I'll probably squirt a little bit there. All right, so a little bit of Simple Green, and I just have this in a bottle, and I use it just for tires. And of course clean, obviously, just a little bit. Okay, now it might say don't exceed like 35 PSI or something like that when you don't want to overinflate it when you're blowing it up, but you want to be very careful. Now, when you put air in it, make sure that this valve stem does not get thrown in there. And I forgot one thing. Now you can put your valve stem back in, because I took it out to relieve the air. So you gotta make sure you put that back in there. Make sure it's nice and firmly seated. Okay, you can just feel it, it'll be nice and seated. Then you go ahead and put your air in. I'm only putting in a little bit at a time because there's a lot of air in there, and the air has to come out to get the tube to fill up that airspace. So it's gonna probably come out your valve stem, most likely. And you don't want to get it trapped in there, which I never really had that problem. But I just do a little bit at a time. Let the air come out. That little bit of air that you hear at the end there, it's coming out the valve stem hole. All right? Now, as long as you check the inside of your tire, 100%, there's nothing protruding in there, you don't have thorns, you don't have any nails, this should set up just fine. This is where you get your gauge. The rear tires on the John Deeres are usually 10 pounds. All right, we're at 6.3 right now. And I always come back the next day. All right, 8.6. I'll come back the next day and double check it. All right, so we're at 10.1 right now. I'm gonna leave it at that. And then tomorrow, I'll come back, I'll check it tomorrow. I'll put the valve stem cap on for now. Now this is where you relieve your vice grips with the, something to grab it that it's not gonna let it slip back in there. Once you have pressure there, it won't go back in and you're good to go. All right, so now we gotta get this thing back on the machine, and this is where people lose their keyway. I'm not gonna put the keyway on yet. I'm not gonna put this on yet. Okay, so now I definitely recommend, since it has so much rust on there, I'm using a little bit of emery cloth. You can see the rust just falling off right there. Now for video purposes, I'm not gonna go crazy on this, but I'm also gonna show you, once you get it sanded down and nice and clean, you're gonna put a little bit of never seize, if you have never seize on it, all right? And that will help you next time, if you ever need to take the tire off. Because these things will rust up, and they're a real bear to get off. PB Blaster is your friend when it comes to getting these tires off the rim, not tires off the axle. Make sure you have valve stem sticking out. Gonna go ahead and put it up on here. Now the keyway is not in there, and what I do is there's a couple different reasons. Right now, I can spin the tire and the axle's staying still. If you do not put the keyway back in there, you won't be driving anywhere. But also, I was just moving all that never seize around. And now all you have to do is line up the square holes. So there's a square hole on top of the rim here, and there's a square hole in the keyway shaft for the axle. And you get them lined up. I push on it while I'm trying to find the exact space. Once you're in, it should slide in fairly easily unless you're very rusted up. And you can just go ahead and tap it in with a screwdriver all the way in as far as it'll go. Then you put your big washer on. And another tool I forgot was a pair of pliers to put this down, snap that in place. Okay, so when I put these in, I usually, there's 3 tabs on this C-clip. The middle tab I will put in the center of the axle keyway, and I'll line it up. You have to put it down, but if you can line it up just right, then you can snap it right down into the center like that, and that holds it in the keyway. Everything is tight, and that is locked in. Then you go ahead now, and if it's cold outside and these things are really hard, use a heat gun. You can heat these up and they'll get pliable. This one's very pliable. We're gonna go ahead and just push it on, just turn it. I usually just turn it around a little bit and push it on. There you go. And that's pretty much it for putting a tube, repairing your tire on the rear of a John Deere tractor. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please tell your friends about my channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.